Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler. This time we look at something a little weird, at least in the context of this show. It's extremely rare on this show for us to look at things outside of the US, the UK, and Japan. Just because usually, if I'm getting something from outside the US, it tends to be something from the UK or Japan. It's not that I'm not interested in stuff from other regions, it's just that usually that's where it tends to come from. Well, just recently, a gent who is also a member of the Star Wars Home Video group over on Facebook, set up by Justin Berger, had an item for sale that I was thinking, this might be interesting. This could be something fun to show on the show, but which really didn't fit in terms of what I usually collected. But my thought was, how often am I getting a chance to get this particular item? I might as well get it while I can. And so I did. So, thanks to Josh, we have an interesting item to take a look at this time. It is a copy of Revenge of the Sith. Oh, we've seen plenty of those. But it's Revenge of the Sith on VHS. Yeah, we know, the US didn't get a VHS copy of Revenge of the Sith, but the UK did. We've looked at it before. In fact, it's this copy right here. Whatever. Remember, this was that copy from Ricky Ray over in Scotland that we took a look at early on in the series. So, we have looked at that before. At least English language from the UK before, but that's not what this was. This was a copy of Revenge of the Sith on VHS from Finland. Yes, Finland. The first, and so far only thing from Finland in my Star Wars Home Video Library, or to be featured here on From the Star Wars Home Video Library. We're going to take a look at Revenge of the Sith from Finland on VHS. So yes, even Finland got it on VHS, and the US did not. That release looks a lot like the UK version, but they're not exactly the same. So let's take a look at Revenge of the Sith from Finland. Notice there's Star Wars and the 3 behind it, but this isn't Revenge of the Sith. Remember, this is Finland, and boy am I going to butcher anything I try to read here, so I apologize if you're a native Finnish speaker. If it's even called Finnish. That's how little I know about the Finnish language. We have here the title, Sithin Kosto. Oh yeah, Sithin Kosto. That sounds like something I would say when I look at the price tag of new Star Wars items, especially stuff from like Kodabokaya and some of these other companies. Sithin Kosto! Another way of saying, damn, that's expensive, and I'm pretty sure that this actually means Revenge of the Sith, right? So we have Revenge of the Sith, or Sithin Kosto here. We have our traditional image there, right? So we've seen the image before, of course, with the little Jedi Starfighter, or Jedi Interceptor kind of flying there on the edge and all. Down at the bottom, digitally mastered THX for superior sound and picture quality. Why could I read that? Because that, which is sort of a standard label, is in English. Then, we look at the spine. We have our 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment in English, Star Wars 3 in English, THX, Lucasfilm, product number, and then I guess that's a company down there at the bottom. Again, in English, except the company name, so THX Lucasfilm in English, product number 29309-58, for those who are curious. And it looks like it's from Minty Video, M-Y-Y-N-T-I Video, all as what appears to be one word down there. And of course, nothing on top, bottom, or the other side, because this is a clamshell, somewhat see-through, kind of frosted-looking type of case here. The back, Taru on Valamus. Okay, the saga is complete. Maybe that's what the UK one says. And we have our Vader in sort of Frankenstein mode up here, part of the Battle of Coruscant. Yoda with the Wookiees and all down there. We have our text about the film, which again I can't read. Coco Star Wars Taru on. Yeah, I do like it because we've got Darth Vaderixi. Yeah, Vader IKSI. Yeah, I don't know the language, but I'm always fascinated to see how proper names carry over from one language to another. Like if you're going from the English name John with a J and into, say, the Cyrillic alphabet over in Russia, there is no J. So it's basically D and then the letter J, which is a letter we don't even have in the English language. I'm always fascinated by that kind of stuff. But it means that I'm not quite sure what I'm reading here. I'm assuming it's very similar to the text there for the UK. Then underneath, there's all your cast and crew information in English again. Well, at www.starwars.com, the English website, copyright information, UPC symbol, and then here is your rating. Okay. Now, the rating is kind of confusing to me. It says rating 11, 200409, reference number of some kind, VET-SFB. And I did a little bit of research to figure out exactly what this was that I was looking at. Okay. So apparently, Finland had a rating system up until about the end of 2011 that was set up by the Finnish Board of Film Classification. Okay? That's where you get the VET-SFB thing from because of the Finnish and Swedish names for that term, the Finnish Board of Film Classification. Okay? It's part of the Ministry of Education in Finland, and it basically ran from 1946, right after World War II, up until 2011. But then in 2012, the duties of setting up the ratings and everything went to the Finnish Center for Media Education and Audiovisual Media, which is also under the Ministry of Education. And what I find kind of odd is that when I looked this up in most places, Wikipedia being the first place that I looked, but there were other places I double-checked to kind of see if the information was the same, and it was. Could all just be pulling from the same place. It said that the ratings that were available for the Finnish Board of Film Classification, I'm having such a hard time saying that. You have no idea how many takes I just used to try to say that. In terms of the ratings, the choices are S, which means for all ages, K-7, or K to 7, for people 7 years or older, where under 7 years old requires parental guidance for admittance to the film. K to 12, same thing but for 12 years old. K to 16, for people 16 or older, and so on. K-18, and KK. KK being banned from any kind of commercial distribution whatsoever. So that's like the extreme. But I noticed that there's no 11 on there. Now, there is such a thing, though, as a VET rating 11, which would match this 11. Thing is, when I looked that up, that 11 seemed to be something where it's like they were playing loosey-goosey, so to speak, with the ratings, because that appears to be a rating that was actually designed for video games, but that also applied to some different home video releases, DVD releases and things like that. Video games, DVD releases, CD-ROMs. So it seems like there's sort of a blending here, perhaps, of what was going on. And then the video game stuff eventually wound up being replaced also under PEGI, the PEGI 16 that you see on some trailers, PEGI being the Pan-European Game Information Rating System. So I'm not quite sure what exactly it is that I'm looking at here, other than to say that if the 11 is what I think it is, and the 11 represents the age of someone who should be allowed to see it, then it's actually interesting to me because this says 11, the UK one says 12, the US says 13, because we have PG-13 rating. So you're expected to be able to handle it better and more maturely in the UK than in the US, and in Finland as compared to either of the other two. You can handle it at 11. Over here, you can handle the burning of Anakin and everything more like around 13. Interesting how these arbitrary numbers get used, right? Kind of like, you are adult enough to make decisions for yourself as an adult and to vote at age 18. But drinking? Ha! No, not until you're 21. We don't want you learning how to vote and drinking at the same time and stuff. But don't worry, it's okay to drive a car at age 16 because you don't actually have to be mature to drive a car. Yeah, arbitrary age things, just another part of history that's kind of a mind bender when you start looking into it. But let's take a look at some of the differences here. And let's start inside, because we haven't looked at the tape yet. The tape is where things get really different. There's your label. Up there. It says 20th Century Fox, FS Film, it's like OY. SF is the company logo. Then the Minty Video, MYYNTI Video. And then there's sort of a copyright-looking warning down there. And then you've got your spine here. The spine is where you'll actually see the product name. FS Film OY, Star Wars, Roman numeral 3, Sith Costo. Then a website, www.fs-film.fi. That'll actually take you to the company's website, which nowadays isn't at that address, but if you go to that address, it'll then forward you to the correct one. And then runtime, in English, runtime, 136 minutes. So a mixture of English and what I'm assuming is Finnish on the other side there. Interesting. But that's a far cry from the UK version. The UK version has a more elaborate Star Wars logo than even the US tended to have, because it's basically the cover of the VHS case saying not for rental up there at the top with its rating on it and everything. But then, to be fair, the UK didn't have a side label at all, and Finland's did. As for the cases, you may notice here, there's a slight height difference. The one for Finland's a little bit taller because it's more of a standard case, at least in terms of the way that the US looks at these types of cases, whereas here with the UK version, it's much more form-fitting to the actual tape inside. Also there, looking at it, you'll notice that the UK version does have a rating on the cover, whereas the Finnish version does not. Otherwise, they're pretty much the same layout there. The sides, again, aside from the rating, pretty much the same layout. And of course, there's a language difference, duh. But as far as design goes, just a difference there of the one having the rating on the spine. Then we look at the back, and it's very, very similar. You notice that for the UK, which is the one on your right here, the rating is on the bottom left, and a bigger barcode is off to the right, whereas for the Finnish version, the barcode is on the right and smaller, with the rating smaller on top of that. The layout of the text is very much the same. The biggest difference, really, that's apparent on first notice, other than where the rating is just that in the UK, they felt it appropriate to tell us up above the Vader image that it's not for rental, whereas we don't see that at all, pardon me, on the Finnish version. So again, we have a nation across the pond that got to have a VHS version of Revenge of the Sith, so they can actually have some complete sets of the Lucas live-action films on VHS, whereas the US cannot. And we are seeing variations on a theme in terms of the packaging, but a completely different set of labels for the VHS tape itself. I'm always interested to see how things vary between regions, and this is one of the biggest variances in terms of labels that I've seen, and it's very cool to see this with Finnish on it, as opposed to there with the English language that's usually on the different products that I wind up picking up. Either that or usually Japanese, right? With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers, even if they're in Finland.